It began just before dawn, when the sky still held the hush of dreams. In a quiet neighborhood in Chicago, a father poured coffee into a chipped mug, rubbing sleep from his eyes. Upstairs, his daughter should have been asleep, arms wrapped around her favorite stuffed panda. But when he called her name, only silence answered. He checked again. The blankets were untouched. The window was open. The night breeze blew in, soft and wrong. Across the ocean, in a Tokyo apartment, a mother dropped a bowl of rice when she found her son's room empty, the balcony door ajar. In Johannesburg, a grandmother ran barefoot into the street, screaming for her twin grandsons. In Sao Paulo, in Delhi, in Moscow, the story repeated. Parents wept, neighbors shouted, police sirens wailed, but too late. By sunrise, the count had begun. 47 children, gone. No pattern, no ransom, no sign. Just gone. Earth froze. News channels ran breaking reports every hour. Some blamed black market traffickers. Others whispered about secret government projects. But orbital surveillance told the real story. One by one, grainy satellite footage revealed flickers, barely visible slivers of metal breaking through clouds, leaving glowing scars in the sky. Unregistered spacecraft. They came in silently, cloaked. They left without a trace. The abductions were not human. In a darkened briefing room beneath the Pentagon, the president of the Earth Coalition stared at the footage. Around her, top generals, scientists, and analysts sat in grim silence. One man, a grizzled intelligence chief, leaned forward. "They took our kids," he said, voice flat. "Aliens, that's what we're looking at." The silence deepened. Then the president spoke. "Find them, all of them." Far above Earth, deep in the black beyond the moon, a ship hung in silence. It wasn't sleek or beautiful. It was functional, predatory. Inside, alien guards watched over rows of cages. Each held a child, confused, scared, whispering to each other in hushed voices. Some cried. Others stared defiantly through the bars. One girl, about 10 years old, held her little brother close. Her lip trembled, but her eyes were sharp. "They'll come for us," she whispered to him. "How do you know?" he asked, barely a whisper. She pointed at the stars beyond the bars. "Because we're not like them," she said. "We're human." Back on Earth, a message began echoing through every military channel. Pro-GCTURI Tributiun. Activated. Across the globe, special forces mobilized, ships powered up, engines roared. Humanity had never been truly united, until now. The galaxy had taken something precious. They thought humans would mourn and move on. They didn't know. Humans mourn with their fists clenched, and when someone takes their children, they become the most dangerous hunters the stars will ever know. The IFC retribution cut through the void like a shark in still water. It tall, black and sleek, reflected the stars only faintly as it glided toward the outer rim of human-controlled space. Inside, the crew moved with the quiet efficiency of a predator preparing for the hunt. General Ayla Rourke stood at the bridge's command console, her sharp eyes scanning the data streaming across the screens. Her fingers moved instinctively, tapping coordinates, cross-referencing flight paths, running threat assessments. Every detail, every angle was locked into her mind. She didn't need to look at the map to know what came next. Her voice cut through the silence of the command center. "Status report," she said, her tone low but commanding. The operations officer, a young officer named Niles, looked up from his terminal, sweat on his brow. He was nervous, not because of the mission. They were all nervous, but because this was Ayla's first mission since she'd returned from her last assignment. A high-profile failure that still hung over her like a storm cloud. "Trail's fresh," Niles said, his voice shaky. "They jumped out just past the Voltor Nebula. We've confirmed 4 other ships scattered across the route. They're keeping tight formations, though. It's like they know we're coming." Ayla's lips curled into a faint smile. They know, but they had no idea just how far humans would go when they were backed into a corner. "You're underestimating us," she muttered more to herself than anyone else, her fingers moving across the touchpad. The retribution was already running silent, cloaking its massive signature from scanners. No one would see them coming until it was too late. "The alien fleet has been avoiding detection," said Lieutenant Santiago, who stood at the far side of the room, monitoring the intel stream. "We've identified 4 separate alien species operating in these regions. No obvious patterns yet. They're too organized to be random." Ayla's face hardened. "Then they're not just taking kids, they're hiding them." It was more than just an abduction. Earth's children had been taken, yes, but they weren't the first. This was a message, a test, a sick game. Whoever was behind it thought they could pull this off without consequence. "Target acquired," said Niles. The screen flashed. A small red dot blinked. The Retribution's weapon systems hummed to life. A soft, deadly purr. "We're in range of the Velkesh Dominion's outer defense grid." Ayla's heart beat faster. Velkesh. The name was a thorn, a reminder of an ancient conflict. The Velkesh Dominion was a collection of cold-blooded, merciless species who ruled vast stretches of the galaxy, known for their cruelty to weaker races. They were an empire that preyed on the desperate. But what they didn't understand was that they had just woken up the most relentless hunters in the universe. The human spirit was a weapon, and this time, it was primed for war. She took a breath, letting the weight of the moment settle into her bones. It was time to remind the galaxy what it meant to be human. "Prepare the assault team," she ordered. The ship's internal intercom crackled. "All hands to battle stations. Prepare for immediate deployment." There was no more silence on the bridge. The hum of engines, the clatter of boots against metal floors, the shrill tones of the alarm. They were all symphonies to Ayla's ears. This was it. There would be no more waiting, no more negotiating. The hunt had begun. The Retribution dropped out of hyperspace like a shadow ripping through the fabric of the universe. For a moment, there was only the cold, silent abyss, until the first glance of the enemy fleet came into view. The ships were large, grotesque in their own right, angular and menacing. Their hulls were coated in slick, black armor, reflecting the light of distant stars. They moved in tight formations, almost too perfect to be natural, their sensor screens practically glowing with the intensity of their defenses. Ayla leaned forward, her eyes sharp, focused. "Get me an identification on their lidship." The officer at the tactical console worked quickly, fingers flying over the touchpad. On the main screen, a glowing red symbol blinked as a new ship designation appeared. "Velkesh Dominion Dreadnought Voriska, flagship of the invasion fleet," the officer said, voice tight. "They're about to jump again." Ayla's lips tightened into a thin line. The Velkesh weren't just running, they were trying to lose them, to scatter into deep space where even the Retribution couldn't follow. But they hadn't counted on the relentless determination of the humans behind the wheel. "Lock all tracking systems onto their position. We'll follow them into the void if we have to." The ship's sensors began pulsing, tracking the enemy's every movement, every shift in course. The Retribution's sleek form glided in behind, invisible for now, a predator watching its prey from the shadows. Ayla turned to her crew, her voice like cold steel. "Prepare for boarding. We'll be taking one of those ships. You know what to do." The battle began in silence. The first shot from the Retribution was a warning. A pulse of energy so powerful it cut through the dark, like a streak of lightning. The Velkesh ship shook as it absorbed the strike, but they hadn't been unprepared. Their guns opened fire almost immediately, beams of violet energy rippling through the darkness. "All hands brace for impact." A voice blared over the intercom as the ship lurched under the bombardment. Ayla held her ground, not flinching, not even blinking. "We can take it," she muttered to herself. "We have to." The Retribution dove hard to the left, evading a series of heavy plasma blasts that ricocheted off the ship's shields. The enemy fleet was fast, but Ayla had always believed that humans were faster, more unpredictable. The alien ships fired with precision, but their movements were mechanical, too methodical. Humans could adapt. They could think. "Prepare boarding parties." Ayla's voice rang through the ship's loudspeakers as they locked onto the Velkesh flagship. The Retribution's shuttle bays began to open, revealing sleek assault crafts loaded with her best men and women. Elite soldiers who had fought through the worst the galaxy could throw at them. This wasn't a rescue. It was a war. The boarding shuttles shot forward, their engines roaring with power, closing the distance between the two ships in seconds. They slammed into the Velkesh dreadnought's side with a violent jolt, their docking clamps catching on the armored hull. Inside the ship, the chaos was immediate. The air was thick with the smell of scorched metal and ozone. Alien soldiers ran toward them, their weapons raised, but they had no chance. The human forces moved with a deadly fluidity, gunning down the Velkesh with precision, sweeping through corridors like a tidal wave. "Clear," the soldier shouted over comms as they moved deeper into the enemy ship, the mission clear in their minds. Find the children, break their systems, and tear this fleet apart. On the screens back on the Retribution, their progress was clear. Every alien ship was marked, every station taken. Earth's message was simple: we fight for our own. We will not stop until every last one is safe. The Retribution hung in the cold silence of space, its engines humming quietly as the massive Velkesh dreadnought Voreska floated dead in the water, its lights flickering like the last breath of a dying beast. Ayla stood at the command center, her sharp eyes tracking the alien ship's every twitch. The battle was over. For now. But the war was just beginning. On the main view screen, the flag of the Velkesh Dominion rippled, an intricate pattern of stars and lines forming a symbol of cruel power. The enemy might have thought they were untouchable, but Ayla was about to show them just how wrong they were. "Report," she said, her voice calm, every word measured with precision. "We've neutralized their internal defenses," Lieutenant Santiago answered, eyes glued to his console. "Boarding teams are sweeping the ship, and we've located the bridge. But the Velkesh command is refusing to surrender. They're still holding key personnel inside." Ayla's lips tightened. She had hoped for a quicker resolution, but the Velkesh were as stubborn as they were dangerous. Still, the children were the priority, and Ayla had made a promise to get them back, no matter what it took. "Prepare for direct communication," she ordered. "I'll be making them an offer they can't refuse." On the enemy bridge, the alien commander, Velkesh General Mornak, sat frozen in his chair, his numerous eyes blinking rapidly as the human transmission came through. The screen flickered to life, revealing Ayla's calm, unyielding face. "General Mornak," she said smoothly, her voice carrying across the link. "I trust you're comfortable. I suggest you make yourself comfortable for a while longer. We've disabled your fleet, boarded your ship, and taken control of your systems. You're not in a position to negotiate, but I'll give you a chance to save what's left of your pride." Mornak snarled, his multiple mouths stretching wide in a display of contempt. "You dare threaten us, human? You have no idea who you're dealing with." "I know exactly who I'm dealing with," Ayla replied, her gaze unflinching. "The Velkesh Dominion. A dying empire that's made the mistake of thinking it could enslave my people's children. A mistake that will cost you everything." For a moment, the bridge was silent. Then Mornak spoke again, his voice filled with icy venom. "You may have taken a few ships, but you cannot stop us. The children will be sold to the highest bidder, and there's nothing you can do about it." Ayla's lips curled into a slight smile, but it was the smile of a predator, not a diplomat. "You misunderstand," she said, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "You've stolen something from us, and that will be your last mistake. You'll return every single child, or you'll face the full force of humanity. We don't need your permission to end you." The threat hung heavy in the air, but the real power behind it was the steel resolve in Ayla's eyes. She knew the galaxy had underestimated humans, had always underestimated humans, but they had never truly seen the rage that could be awakened when a mother or a father's child was taken. "Here's your final warning," Ayla continued, her words final. "Return our children, or I promise you, we'll burn the stars until there's nothing left of you but ashes." Back on the Retribution, the crew waited, breath held. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening, stretching into eternity. But Ayla knew. She knew that her message had been received loud and clear. The hunt was no longer just about survival. It was about making sure the galaxy understood one simple truth: don't take what doesn't belong to you, especially not when it's human. The quiet hum of the Retribution's engines was the only sound that filled the corridors as Ayla and her crew prepared to board the final section of the Velkesh dreadnought. The situation was dire. The enemy fleet had been broken, But there was still one remaining task: to find the children, to bring them home. "Status report," Ayla said, her voice steady, though the tension in the air was palpable. Santiago, standing next to her, surveyed the data on his screen. His fingers danced over the console, tapping in commands with practiced precision. "We've traced their location to the lower levels," he reported, his voice strained. "The children are being held in a secure, high-security area, heavily guarded, but we're closing in." Ayla nodded, her jaw tightening. "Prepare the team. I want all entry points covered. No one gets in our way." The mission had become more than just a rescue. The children, their courage, their defiance, had become a symbol of resistance. These were no helpless victims waiting to be saved. As Ayla had discovered during earlier missions, the human spirit was far stronger than anyone had anticipated. The children, though scared and confused, had begun fighting back. Some were already using the small, makeshift weapons they had crafted out of whatever they could find. One of the older girls had even taken out a guard with a sharp piece of scrap metal. "They're already learning," Ayla muttered to herself, a faint smile tugging at the corner of her mouth. Down in the depths of the Velka ship, the children had begun to band together. Reyna, the girl who had led the rebellion in the prison camp, stood in front of the others. She was no older than 11, but her eyes were hard, sharp with the determination of someone who had seen the horrors of the galaxy up close and refused to bow to them. "We can do this," Reyna said, her voice quiet but full of fire. "They think they own us, but we don't belong to them. We never will." The others nodded, some clutching the crude weapons they'd fashioned, others simply their fists, tight and ready. Reyna reached over to where her brother Jax crouched next to her, his face streaked with grime. He'd been scared at first, but not anymore. "You ready?" she asked. Jax, despite his small frame, gave her a grin, his hands tightening around a jagged piece of metal. "Let's show them what humans can do." Together, the children moved through the halls, their feet light but quick, slipping past the few remaining Velkesh guards. The soldiers, stunned by the sheer audacity of these kids, were caught off guard. It was clear that the children weren't just fighting for their lives anymore. They were fighting for each other. One by one, they took down the guards, ambushing them with surprising efficiency. The loud crack echoed through the hallway as Reyna slammed a heavy object into a guard's knee, sending him crumpling to the ground. Jax followed, using his small frame to dart between the legs of a larger guard, tripping him and knocking him unconscious. "No mercy," Reyna said softly as she moved forward, her eyes scanning for more threats. "They started this. Now it's our turn." And they did not stop. The children fought with a ferocity that shocked even the human soldiers. They had learned to be fast, ruthless, and above all, clever. They would not be pawns in someone else's game. Back aboard the Retribution, Ayla received the signal that the children were secure. The message was simple, direct: mission complete. They're alive, and they're fighting. Ayla felt a spark of pride flicker in her chest. These kids, who had been taken from their homes, had shown the galaxy what humanity was capable of. They weren't helpless, and they sure as hell weren't afraid. "We have them," Ayla said, her voice steady. "Let's bring them home," Santiago replied, a grin breaking across his face. The moment Ayla stepped onto the transport shuttle, the air felt different. It was heavy with the weight of what they had just accomplished, but it was also alive, charged with the electric thrill of victory. Behind her, the children filed into the shuttle, eyes wide, some wary, others smiling. A few clutched stuffed animals or their meager belongings. Some carried small weapons they used to fight their captors, twisted metal, jagged shards of glass. But they were no longer afraid. They had tasted power and courage, and now they were coming home. Ayla couldn't help but let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. It was over, or at least it felt like it was. Mission accomplished, she muttered under her breath, glancing back at the still smoking wreckage of the Velkesh dreadnought. It had been a brutal fight, but the children were free. The galaxy would know what humanity was capable of now, just as she had promised. The shuttle doors hissed shut, and the hum of the engines came to life, low and steady as the ship powered up. Ayla took a seat, her eyes never leaving the children. They were the reason she had done this, the reason she had put her life on the line and led this assault. The children were still in shock, and Ayla couldn't blame them. They had been taken from their homes, dragged across the galaxy to become pawns in a game they hadn't even understood, and now they were headed back to Earth. But what would that look like for them? Could they ever really return to their old lives? Could anyone? "We're not going back to Earth just yet," Ayla said softly, catching the eye of Lieutenant Santiago as he sat nearby. "We need to make sure we're not leaving anyone else behind." Santiago nodded. He knew what Ayla meant. The Velkash Dominion wasn't going to let this go. Their empire had taken too much of a blow to just walk away quietly. No, the fight wasn't over. It would never be over until every last child was back where they belonged. The shuttle screen blinked, showing a map of their trajectory toward Earth. But Ayla's mind was already calculating their next move. She had no intention of giving the Velkash a chance to regroup. They would need to strike hard and fast again. The galaxy needed to know that humanity wasn't just a target. It was a force to be reckoned with. From the back of the shuttle, Reyna, the oldest of the rescued children, approached Ayla. She was still carrying the sharp piece of metal she had used to fight her captors. Her eyes were full of questions. "You think they'll come for us again?" Reyna asked quietly. Ayla met her gaze, her heart swelling with respect for this girl, this warrior. "They might try, but we'll be ready. We'll always be ready." Reyna nodded slowly, her grip tightening on her weapon. She didn't say anything more, but Ayla could see the fire in her eyes. These children weren't the same anymore. They had been forged in the heat of battle, and now they were ready to take on whatever the galaxy threw at them. The shuttle moved forward, the stars streaking past as it left the wreckage of the Velkash fleet behind. Earth was waiting, but so was the rest of the galaxy, and humanity had just made its mark. As the shuttle broke through the atmosphere, Ayla glanced out the window, the blue and green of Earth coming into view. She could almost feel the warmth of the sun shining on her face. It wasn't just a victory, it was a declaration. The hunt was over, but the galaxy would never forget the name of the humans who would never stop fighting. The Retribution glided silently through the vastness of space, its sleek hull a silent sentinel in the infinite black. It had been 2 weeks since the rescue. 2 weeks since Ayla and her crew had brought the children back to Earth. Yet the sense of relief that had come with that victory had quickly given way to an unsettling quiet. The Earth they returned to was not the same one they had left. The tension was palpable, like a storm hanging on the horizon. The Velkash had not been content with the losses they'd suffered. The quiet of the past few days was merely the calm before the inevitable storm. Ayla stood in the command center, eyes trained on the forward view. 1,000 stars glittered beyond the glass, but there was no peace to be found in them. Not yet. The children had returned home, but the scars of their captivity would never fade, and there were still whispers of other fleets, still other forces gathering in the shadows. Santiago approached her, his expression tense. "The Velkash Dominion isn't backing down. We've intercepted more of their communications. They're organizing a retaliatory strike." Ayla's jaw clenched. The war had only just begun. How soon? Hard to say. They've regrouped faster than we anticipated. Their fleet's moving towards the Rygoth sector. Ayla nodded, her mind already shifting gears. She'd known the Velkash wouldn't just let this go. They'd underestimate humanity's ability to fight back, and it would cost them. "Get me a clear comm channel to Earth's command. I want to speak with General Grayson." Santiago hesitated but quickly complied. "Channel open." Ayla's voice was calm, but beneath it, the weight of leadership bore down on her shoulders. "General Grayson, this is Ayla Dre, captain of the Retribution. I need your support. The Velkash are preparing for a second strike, and we can't face them alone." The voice on the other end crackled for a moment before responding. "Ayla, we've been expecting this. You're not the only ones the Velkash have in their sights. We're already mobilizing forces, but I need to know you're ready to hit them hard, hit them fast." "We are," Ayla said, her voice unwavering. "We're not just defending Earth anymore. We're taking the fight to them. This ends now." A brief silence followed before Grayson spoke again, this time with a note of respect. "We'll coordinate our efforts, Earth's forces and yours. We need to show the Velkash they made a mistake picking a fight with humanity." Ayla's gaze shifted to the map of the Rygoth sector on the display, the galaxy's expanse stretching before her. The Velkash fleet was massive, but there was no fear in Ayla's chest. She had seen humanity's strength firsthand. The children they had rescued had fought with more courage than any army, and the same spirit ran through the veins of every soldier aboard the Retribution. "We'll see them coming," Ayla said, her voice now a hard edge, "and when we do, we strike." The Retribution's engines flared to life, a roar of power that vibrated through the entire ship. The crew gathered in the mission room, their faces lit by the dim red lights. They weren't just soldiers, they were survivors, and now they were about to be the galaxy's reckoning. Ayla stood at the helm, her grip firm on the console. "Prepare for battle. We're not running from this one. The Velkash won't be the only ones taking prisoners today." The ship's systems hummed in sync with her words, the crew moving as one, preparing for the fight of their lives. This wasn't just a war for Earth. It was a declaration to the entire galaxy. Humanity would not be silenced. Not now, not ever. The stars ahead blurred into streaks of light as the Retribution shot through the void. It had been hours since they'd left Earth's orbit, and now, with the Rygoth sector just ahead, Ayla's eyes never left the forward view. Her hands rested firmly on the console, but her mind was racing through the final details of their attack strategy. Coordinates locked. Santiago's voice cut through the tense silence. He was at the helm, his fingers flying over the controls with practiced ease. "We're coming up on their fleet." Ayla nodded but didn't respond immediately. She was deep in thought, visualizing the next move. The Velkash were not an easy target. Their fleet was vast, and their tactics brutal, but they had underestimated one crucial factor: humanity's relentless determination. "They'll be ready for us," she said finally, her voice low, but filled with certainty. "We hit hard, fast, and precise. No mistakes." "Understood, Captain." Santiago's reply was sharp, the weight of her words not lost on him. On the main screen, a series of ships appeared. Velkash warships, enormous and formidable, their sleek dark designs creating an intimidating wall of steel in the distance. The Retribution wasn't alone. Earth's fleet was right behind them, every ship brimming with resolve, eager for the fight. Ayla took a deep breath, then turned to her crew, each one standing at attention, ready. "This is it. We're not just fighting for our survival, we're fighting for everything. Our families, our freedom, and our future." The Velkash chose the wrong people to pick a fight with. Her words cut through the tension, fueling the fire in her crew's eyes. They were ready. "Prepare for battle stations," Ayla commanded. The room hummed with the sound of activation as the ship's weapon systems powered up, and the crew moved with practiced efficiency. Santiago's hands flew over the controls as he navigated the ship into position. Ayla's heart raced as the battle unfolded before her, every move critical, every second counting. The moment had arrived. The Velkash fleet fired first, their energy weapons lancing through the darkness, streaking toward the Retribution with deadly precision. But Ayla was ready. She had anticipated this. With a sharp command, she had Santiago maneuver the ship in a series of evasive twists, the hull groaning as it narrowly avoided a direct hit. "Return fire," she shouted. The Retribution's weapon systems roared to life. Blasts of energy shot out, tearing into the Velkash ships. One ship exploded in a flash of blue light, debris scattering in all directions. Another took a hit to its engines, its silhouette darkening as it struggled to maintain flight. Yet the Velkash were relentless. Their ships kept coming, their fire intensifying. Ayla watched as one of the Earth ships was hit, flames and sparks erupting from its side. A shudder ran through the Retribution, but the ship held steady. The crew had faith in her and in each other. "Focus on the lead ship," Ayla ordered. "We take down the command vessel. The rest of the fleet will crumble." Santiago's hands were a blur as he adjusted their trajectory, bringing the Retribution into firing range of the largest Velkash ship. The Retribution's cannons unleashed a concentrated barrage of fire, targeting weak points in the enemy ship's armor. With each blast, the enemy vessel staggered, cracks forming along its massive hull. The Velkash responded in kind, sending a volley of weapons toward them. The Retribution shook under the impact, but Ayla's determination only sharpened. "We're almost there," Santiago called, his voice strained but determined. Ayla tightened her grip on the armrest. This was it, the final push. "One more strike," she said. "Give it everything we've got." The crew nodded, each one steeling themselves for the final moment. With a cry of fierce victory, the Retribution launched its final shot, directly into the heart of the Velkesh command vessel. The explosion that followed was blinding, the shockwave reverberating through the ship. For a long moment, the silence was deafening. And then, slowly, the remaining Velkesh ships began to retreat, the survivors no longer willing to face the wrath of humanity. The Retribution stood victorious, the stars beyond now quiet and still. Ayla allowed herself a small smile. It wasn't over, not entirely, but they had won, and for the first time in a long time, the future felt like it was theirs to shape.